Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here. So today's podcast is with Stephen Cornett. Now, Stephen farms in the San Diego area, and I actually visited him this last spring when I was out there for a conference. I got to tour his farm. We did a little interview together for his YouTube channel and just got to chat about farming and faith and just where we are headed as a farming community. And so really enjoyed the work that Stephen is doing. He's got a great YouTube channel and some educational content he puts out. So definitely go over and check him out. But again, back to the podcast episode, we had a great time talking about how he's built the farm, talking about how he's going deep into organic using Korean natural farming principles. And another fun thing is that he is planning on relocating. And so we talked through the aspects of that, what that is going to entail, the location that he's looking to relocate to, and just what he's looking for in his new farm, the kind of things that he's looking for. So it was a fun podcast episode. I know you're going to enjoy it. And join me in welcoming Stephen to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Stephen.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, talk to us about your background. How did you get started farming?
Well, it all started around 8 years ago when I and my best friend, Jared Smith of Jared's Real Food, started a farm together. He kind of started a little bit before me. He got offered some land from a family member who had a bunch of open land. Both of us had been getting deeper and deeper into nutrition. You know, we're best friends, so we'd always talk about these concepts and the food system and all this stuff. And ultimately realized that becoming a part of the food system and having a farm business, that'd be the best way to provide health to people. So we kind of just jumped in with both feet and had no idea what we were doing and, tried to create the best farm that we could with the knowledge that we had. And, so 7 days a week, just constantly working and then studying when we weren't farming. So that's how I got my first little start there. So I did that for about a year and a half with Jared. We built out about an acre of his farm. And then at that point, I actually moved to South Korea and taught English there for a couple years and came back to America because I really wanted to farm again. I knew that was my passion. I felt I wasn't able to do it for a couple years. And I was like, I really miss this. This is what I want to do. So I came back to America, to San Diego, started farming with Jared again for another 6 months, and then decided that I wanted to break off and then start my own small farm and create a YouTube channel as well.
Very cool. So it sounds like when you built your farm, you went into a little bit more intentionally with the aspect of education as well as farming.
Yeah, I really did. The big hope was I wanted to show, hey, here's how you can start in a backyard, start a small farm business, and hopefully I'm successful. And then in a few years, I'll be able to buy land and then have a larger scale farm. And that's actually the point that I'm at now. My wife and I went on a trip recently to Tennessee to go kind of, scout out the area, see if that was the state we wanted to live in. And it is. So we're going to actually move out there. So now we're at the stage of setting up a homestead and another small farm out there, hopefully sometime in February.
Very cool. Because currently you're in San Diego area.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And I came out and visited you there, and it was, it's the weather out there is quite unique.
Oh man. Yeah. We're very blessed out here, especially where I am in Lemon Grove.
Yeah.
It's one of the best climates in the world, as they say.
Yeah. So let's talk about a typical day now, because you're doing farming a little bit differently. What does a day look like for you in the farmer, and how's your week set up?
Yeah, so I farm currently on 1/8 of an acre. If you add up my couple plots, I've got my home plot. It's in my backyard. I've gone into the neighbor's yard with about 150 grow bags, and then I have another 8 40-foot by 30-inch beds down the street at another neighbor's house.
Okay.
And so a typical day, I do basically all of this by myself. I have had a volunteer or two here and there. My mom will come help me out occasionally, but 95% of all the work's done by me. And so a typical day, I'm going outside, making sure stuff's watered, of course. If it's a Saturday or Sunday, I'm doing seeding my microgreens. Usually like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'm re-prepping, replanting all of my beds, because since I'm harvesting and selling on Fridays. And then typically like I'll do a bunch of work in the morning into the afternoon, and then the rest of the day I come inside and then I work on videos that I've been shooting or topics I want to explore on my YouTube channel.
Very cool. So with the environment you're in, though, that's a year-round farm. You're farming 52 weeks out of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can go year-round. You never have to stop. A little bit of season extension and, you're off to the races.
Very cool. All right. So how do you prioritize? How do you make sure that you get everything done you need to?
Well, for me, being on a really small scale, it's not too hard to manage everything. I just have my crop plan in my head, honestly, because it's such a small, setup. We're talking 28, 40-foot beds and some microgreens. So I track all of this in an Excel program that I've built. So I'm tracking everything and all of that. I can go back and look, what did I plant last? And that helps me to know what I'm going to plant next. So that's one way, is just tracking everything really well, making good notes, what happens each season, or maybe I tried out a new amendment on a bed. I'm making notes of that, and that helps me to plan out my future decisions. One big thing I do every night is just kind of write down the big things that I want to get accomplished the next day. I'm always making a little mini list of my objectives.
Now, do you also break and do like season? I mean, obviously you don't have really that many big seasons, but do you also try to do longer range planning?
Yeah, definitely. I do, kale, chard, collards, mustards, some of those longer growing crops, greens. And then I do tomatoes and cucumbers and squash as well.
Okay.
So the rest of it though is really fast annuals. Salad mix, heads of lettuce, radishes, beets. Those are kind of my mainstay crops.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So what do you think the hardest thing you've ever done as a farmer has been?
Well, I think going off on my own. When I stopped farming with Jared and went off completely on my own and trying to find land, trying to, figure out how do I set this land up? What are my goals, my intentions? That was probably the hardest part, because it was now I'm all by myself. There's no one. I've got friends and I can ask Jared for questions or help on how to do something, but more by myself and got to figure it all out. But that's the fun part about farming, isn't it?
Yeah. So you are in an urban area. How did you find land? I mean, I know you're on the land that you rent that you live at. How did you convince the landowner to let you tear the whole backyard up?
So in this case, it was really easy because they were family friends. They had just recently purchased the house. They had a granny flat in the back. They were looking for someone to rent that. So word got out to my parents, and they knew I was looking for like a really big backyard and some land. So when I came, I pitched the idea to them. They were about to have a new family, so they didn't have a bunch of time to maintain the backyard. So they're like, okay, yeah, Steven, go for it. Sounds like a great idea. So in the case of where I live and then down the street, my new property, these are both lease-free agreements. So I don't pay them money. I just give them vegetables every single week. Okay.
That's a great way to be able to set that up. So when you're thinking about moving to Tennessee, that also sounds like that's going to be a big project, a momentous task. Have you established exactly where you want to be? And are you going to be buying a place or starting off by renting an area just to see what the area is like? What are your thoughts on how you're going to approach this? Because this is something that, obviously intrigues me with, completely changing what you're doing.
Yes, it is going to be quite the shock. But we're really excited about having our own land and being able to do whatever we want, have more large scale permanent agriculture set up. So what we'll be doing is in February, we're going to go and rent.
Okay.
And really make sure we like the area. We're going to rent outside of Chattanooga. That was the city that we really liked the best. So we want to buy, somewhere 30, 40 minutes outside of the city. And, we're going to house hunt immediately once we get there, hopefully buy within a few months. And then, we're going to drive all our stuff out there.
Okay, cool. So what are you looking for in a farm property? Obviously, you need a house, but talk to us a little bit about that, because I know there's always a lot of people looking for new land.
Sure. Well, in the Chattanooga area, there's, quite a few hills. There's lots and lots of forested area.
Mm-hmm.
So typically a property's not going to be like 100% flat, totally cleared land in most cases.
Yeah.
And that's actually okay with me. I do want a bit of forested land as well. And we're looking to try to get around 5 acres, maybe a little bit more, just depending because of our price range.
Yep.
And so I want to get a little bit of flat land so that I can have a large market garden there, and then an area for orchards. I plan to kind of combine all this knowledge that I've been gaining and practicing the last over 5 years I've been farming.
Yeah.
So incorporating huge diversity of crops is something that I really want to do at this property.
We feel like it'd be more of a permaculture type setup.
Definitely for my homestead piece of it, there's going to be a lot of that influence. I'm going to be doing swales and ponds and different types of nut trees and fruit trees and bushes and vines. I want to have a really nice food system set up for us there, and then set up either a market garden. I've got a few different ideas for the type of farming enterprise I might try this time. I may not actually do market gardening in Tennessee. We'll see. I'm still playing around with the numbers and ideas of different businesses I have in mind.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've actually looked at the Chattanooga area and it is really interesting how hilly and how steep it is outside the city. So it is kind of challenging to find that nice flat area. So very cool. And then for like in that area, what's the water situation? Would you be on a well or? Yeah.
It seems like many of the properties, especially outside of the city, are on well. If I don't have a well, I'm going to drill a well for sure.
Yeah.
They get about 50 inches of rain a year out there.
Oh, wow.
So many of the farmers I ran into and met, a lot of them don't even irrigate most of the year. And it was kind of funny. I'm from San Diego, and so it doesn't rain here for like 8 months out of the year. And people in Tennessee were like, it hasn't rained in 2 weeks. We're in a drought. It's so horrible. So I just had to laugh about that. But I'm looking forward to all that rain. But then that's going to present another set of obstacles for me as well. So it'll be a huge learning curve for me moving back there.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point, too, that you realize that because you're changing drastically just the farming environments, there's going to be a learning curve on exactly how you can produce stuff and that sort of thing. So that's a really good point. Who would you say your mentors have been during your farming journey?
Let's see. Well, as far as people that I've met in person, definitely Mark Ben Dixon. He was the farmers market manager at the La Mesa Farmers Market, where I'm currently selling. This is about like 9 years ago when we started to, my family and I started eating a lot healthier. We started going to the farmers market. Me and Jared had been throwing these ideas around about farming and gardening and stuff. So he's someone that I had talked to every single Friday and picked his brain about farming because he had been a farmer for, I think, 30 years in San Diego. So every single Friday I went to talk to him. I talked to other farmers at the Friday Farmers Market. Those people were a huge influence to me in the beginning. Beyond that, though, people online, of course, like Curtis Stone is probably the biggest influence on the production of my farm and what I grow. Going into like more of the philosophy of how I farm and how I think about farming is like a whole system, is nature being this perfect design, then more like Fukuoka or the permaculture guys, whole grown, and Mark Shepard, all those different types of people I like a lot.
Gotcha. Very cool. So you're not going to be on a blank slate when you're starting your new farm. And you may not do vegetables again, but if you were to kind of use this as like a magic reset button, what systems would you make sure you went ahead and implemented earlier on your farm? When you start this new farm, will you be implementing from day one?
Yeah, I think one thing for sure we kind of mentioned earlier was like a really good crop and seeding plan. That's something that I never really took the time to develop, and part of that's because the farm's so small. It never got out of control for me. But that's something I really think, especially starting farmers, should plan out. Even though your crop plan is definitely going to change throughout the year based on demand, or the season changes earlier, or whatever the factor may be. But I think just having a plan off in the future where well, I'm going to need to seed 5 trays of lettuce every 2 weeks, developing schedules like that. So you're
Yeah.
doing things as efficiently as possible. You can kind of zoom out on all the tasks that you have to do and plan accordingly.
Yeah. And in Tennessee, you're going to want to be seeding more frequently than 2 weeks, probably every week at least.
Yeah.
So, actually, I'm not so sure what's the weather difference between, let's say, Chattanooga and the Nashville area?
Maybe a little bit hotter and more humid,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more rain possibly, but not too different. I'm not an expert on the area yet, so.
Gotcha. Yeah. You're gonna want to keep those because I mean the thing about what we worked with Ray very closely on his lettuce masterclass course, and obviously part of that was just understanding the environment that he's in, and it's amazing that pretty much within like 24 to 36 hours, lettuce can go from being a great nice head to already starting to shoot up in the middle and bolt.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, you really got to be able, and compared to where you are, where lettuce just holds in the field, or even like we talked to Eric Schultz down in Phoenix area, and I've been to his farm, and in the middle of the summer, even, he's like, yeah, I plant lettuce every 2 weeks. And that's because it just holds better without that humidity, which is very interesting. You think it would be the heat that would affect that, but a lot of times it's more of the humidity challenges and that they have there.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things a lot of people just, and I never thought of before I worked with him on that. So, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the education you do, because this is a big part of your farm. So you speak to a lot of, I think, more the home gardener, small scale farm, people interested in learning more about some of these deeper organic / more high nutrient principles of farming. Talk to us a little bit about that, and who you are really focused on.
Absolutely. So I created the YouTube channel and my market garden, hoping to really inspire people and show people what's possible. So yeah, I'm definitely speaking to the small market gardener and the homesteader, the home gardener. And one of the big things for this small farm was to prove to myself and to other people that you could create most of the nutrients that you need to grow on site.
Mm.
And I've been able to do that pretty successfully, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 20 chickens in a chicken coop, and they're my main driver of compost.
Okay.
So all the crop residue, the manure, their bedding, all of that, I take that and I make big compost piles, and I thermophilically heat them up to 150, 160, making compost very quickly. I also do lots of aerated worm and compost teas.
Mm-hmm.
I do, of course, mulching. I do Korean natural farming. I've experimented with biochar. A lot of these different advanced kind of biological techniques and cover cropping. All the main ones I've tried out and have had great success with. And I've run my farm. I say I make about 90% of the nutrients that I'm using on farm. Other things I supplement with would be like a rock dust or kelp
Mm-hmm.
meal, kelp, seaweed, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. And so then that's the basics of what you're teaching for education.
Yeah. So all the skills surrounding gardening, basically, or if you want to grow food for profit.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're a big proponent of Korean natural farming. Talk to us a little bit about what that entails.
Sure. And I actually just put a video out today with one of the best American teachers, Drake.
Okay.
Who runs natural, or just go to pureknf.com. That's his site.
Yeah.
But Korean natural farming, you can kind of think of it in two ways. So it's about collecting and growing indigenous microorganisms. And it's also about creating biostimulants and just raw bioavailable nutrients that you can spray out foliarly. I'd kind of break it into those two pieces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
So the indigenous microorganisms would be microorganisms that are already on your farm soil, or you're just trying to build up a native population. Talk to us about what that is.
Partially, that's partially correct. So when you're collecting IMO,
Mm-hmm.
you're taking, typically it's a cedar box or some wood without chemicals that has holes drilled in it. You're putting in rice you're taking that out into a forest or whatever the most advanced ecosystem that you have around, and you'd bury that under some leaves, and you'd leave it there for 5 to 7 days. It kind of depends on the temperature. And what's going to happen is mycelium and fungi, microbes, all this stuff is going to actually inoculate that rice and start living on it and expanding their population inside of there. So what we do is we collect that box and we mix it 1-to-1 with sugar. So we've got all these live microorganisms in there. We're adding that sugar in there to put them to sleep, essentially.
Okay.
So we're freezing them in time so that we can use them at a later stage where we can advance these indigenous microorganisms even further by feeding them certain foods and biostimulants, allowing their populations to adapt and expand over time. And then you're even incorporating in some of your own native soil from your farm, which then tunes these microbes because they're kind of communicating with the microbes of your native soil. You got these super advanced forest microbes, you're combining them together. It's basically making these super powerful microbes that will go out and increase the soil biology and health of your farm. And these are all the microbes responsible for breaking down nutrients, making them accessible to plants, creating the fungal networks, all these different really important tasks.
Gotcha. And so when you're applying this, are you applying this through sprays, or are you applying this through talk to us about an application of this in the beds?
Yeah, so a lot of the KNF stuff is sprayed foliarly, especially the different nutrients like water-soluble calcium phosphate, all the different fermented plant juices. That's all done foliarly. IMO can be applied dry or wet.
Okay.
So you could just sprinkle it out into your beds like you would any other dried amendment and incorporate it that way. Some people inject with it. You could run it through your drip tape even. So you can just think of these are nutrients and biostimulants and microbes that we can make at home that are far more powerful than ones you could buy. Like one example, EM1, effective microorganisms 1. So in Korean natural farming, we can make that.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like a wild crafted version of lactobacillus organisms.
Are there people that are actually treating their seeds with this before they seed?
Yes. Yeah. There are seed treatment solutions that you can use as well. I have not experimented with that, but tons of people say they have great success with it.
Absolutely. Now, how are you implementing this? Are you using this with every single bed flip, or are you just adding this to strategic places throughout your system, or talk to us about that?
So in the beginning of my farm, the first couple years, I would make and spray compost tea every week or two. I was really trying to up the biology at my farm and really convert my clay soils as quickly as I could. So during that period of time, I would incorporate the KNF inputs into my sprays and spray those out as well, or do soil drenches on my trees. And more recently, I've experimented with injecting it into my irrigation system and spraying it through my sprinkler. What I'm really interested in, long term, is how can we use these naturally derived nutrients that any farmer can make? How can we scale that up to a larger scale to inject that with, say, tractors, or spray this out in a 1 acre field? Because doing it with a backpack, obviously isn't scalable.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you done A/B tests with treating some parts and not treating others and seeing the difference, or you just kind of been applying this to everything?
Most of the time I just apply it to everything. But like I said, the last 3 years, I don't bring in other nutrients besides the minerals and things like that. So one of the things that I would love to do at my next property is do a lot of soil plant tissue tests throughout the development of my land to have evidence to back up all these different natural techniques that I am doing, because we need a lot more evidence to show the results of all these things. We've got lots of anecdotal, we've got lots of pictures and things like that. There are university studies as well at the University of Hawaii that has studied KNF. But in general, a lot of these biological, no-till, things like this hasn't been studied that extensively yet.
Absolutely. With that, I'd like to stop here and take a quick break. In a minute, we'll be back with Stephen from Nature's Always Right. If you've been enjoying this episode so far, you're going to want to head over to growingfarmers.com/free resources and download our free resource bundle to help you shave hours off your week and become a thriving farmer. It includes resources such as our 10 winter growing secrets we wish we knew when we started, which is a ebook which talks about the tips and techniques to get better growth in your winter production. We teach things like the simple but counterintuitive principle that trips up most beginning growers, the shape and size of tunnels that are best for winter production, how to prepare beds so they are weed-free and get beautiful, lush stands of crops, what to do about pests like aphids, voles, and slugs, how to fast-track your research to fine-tune your production for your microclimate, and how to pack in more crops for higher yields and profits. So head over to growingfarmers.com/free resources and download your free resource bundle today. We are back with Stephen from Nature's Always Right, who is farming in San Diego and soon to be in the Tennessee area. So talk to us about the marketing that you're doing now currently. Where are you selling your products?
Currently, I sell 90% of my stuff to the La Mesa Farmers Market.
Okay.
It's about a medium-sized farmers market. We get, over 1,000 people each week. And then I've been there for 2 years. And just over that 2 years, I've developed enough customers that that's the only market I need to go to now. I used to go to a couple others. I also sell privately to some people as well.
Gotcha. Okay. And you talked about doing the quick turn greens. Is there anything else, and some of the tomatoes and peppers and stuff, is there anything else that you focus on in the farm for your cropping?
Yeah. In the fall, winter, spring, I do herbs like cilantro, parsley, dill. And I did peppers this year as well, just some bell peppers. Which for a very small farm, I don't recommend. I don't think they're that profitable, but I did them all in grow bags. So that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I had a really good experiment with that. For a real small farm or a garden, I think grow bags are pretty effective.
Yeah.
Those are the main crops, and microgreens as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember also seeing the artichokes when I was there, which of course are perennials. Then when I actually was up in Portland, I saw one just growing on the side of the road.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because Portland's it's growing between the sidewalk and the road. It's one of those just Portland's the weird town on the West Coast, and so it's just random to see this 8-foot tall artichoke with massive blooms on it, just growing there right inside the street. So
that's kind of weird.
Yeah. So that's how you market. Now you sell to personals as well. So are you building brand trust through just the farmers market and the people you've met? Because you're not trying to grow that much product.
Yeah, that's how I've done it. Just through word of mouth and just meeting people in person. And also I've had a lot of customers come out to meet me just because of Instagram and YouTube even. They've seen some of my content. And then they hear, oh, he sells at the Mesa Farmers Market. Oh, whoa, that's in San Diego. And then they'll come buy from me. So I've had maybe 10, 20% of my customers I've actually gotten from the internet.
Very interesting. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about new farmers, because you've been farming for a while and you work with a lot of beginning farmers. What's the biggest mistake that you see them making?
That's a great question. I think one big mistake would be maybe imagining that you're going to make more money than you think you will, especially in the beginning, especially the first and second season. I would be super conservative on what you think that you'll be able to make. Until my third year in farming, I made a decent amount of money. Like I was able to pay some bills, but until I got into my third year, that's when things really started to click. All my farming systems were just really dialed in. I wasn't making mistakes that cost me money. And I just had my markets and my customers all figured out at that point. So, especially in the beginning, don't underestimate how important having customers ready to go is. People ready to sell to. Because the last thing you want is to do all that work and then be holding a bunch of vegetables that go to waste. And the reason I'm able to make this business work is because I can sell every single vegetable that I grow for the highest possible price that I'm able to command. And so I guess those would be a couple tips.
Gotcha. So what you're saying is that the first 2 years, money's going to be pouring into the farm with your capital investments, but after that, the system starts to change, start being able to pull more money back out, and really start to see everything start to mesh.
Definitely. For me, at least, it was that third year where things really, really clicked and all the investments are paid off and all that sort of thing. So the business is just really running smoothly on its own, paying all its own bills, paying all my personal bills. So
Yeah, very cool. So would you give advice to new farmers to avoid anything particular the first year, like any crops or just any like marketing avenues?
yeah, I'd say for the first year, really limit yourself to the amount of crops that you grow. I'd say don't grow more than like 15. Really dial in what you think the market wants by doing market research. Go to 5 different farmers markets, call up 5 different chefs, talk to your friends and neighbors, find out what they're eating in your area. Just the more work you do up front before you start your farm, I think the better, because once the farm starts going and you've got a plant every week and your mind's in a million different places, having your sales and marketing strategy set up ahead of time will really serve you well, I think.
Gotcha. So if you were to go back and give some encouragement to your new farmer self, what would you feel that would be?
I'd say to myself, there's going to be some hard times ahead. You're going to feel down. You're going to feel, beat up maybe even at times. But if you keep pushing through it, on the other side of it, there's going to be an amazing feeling of success and growth and just fulfillment, and knowing that the food that you're providing to your customers is, unparalleled, and they're eating the best possible food that they could buy. And just, you can never give up. Things like that I would definitely tell myself, because there's some hard times, especially when you have a crop failure or you have animals come in and destroy hundreds of dollars worth of your stuff. It's just there's major setbacks that happen to you when you're farming. And part of being a good farmer, I guess, is to learn resilience and to build that inner strength within yourself.
Talk to us a little about your pest pressure out there. Do you have urban animals moving in? Do you have bug pressure?
So being in an urban area, I have less pest pressure than someone out in the country. We get aphids and the cabbage butterflies, and we have a brigada African beetle out here that's pretty bad on brassicas. But for the most part, it's pretty tame. So I'm a big believer in, if you keep the health of the soil and therefore plant as healthy as possible, the plants have the ability to resist pest and disease. So that's really what I focus on constantly. If there is a plant that looks weakened or is having an issue and it's getting attacked, I will take that out and replace it quickly so that an infestation doesn't happen. But I've never sprayed any type of pesticide or herbicide, whether it's organic or not, on my farm. I've never used safer soap on my farm. So, having diversity of crops as well. I've got flowers and I've got areas that aren't planted with productive crops, just to create more habitat for other insects and things like that, or birds. That's been a big one for me. I've got hundreds of little finches, and they'll be all over my cucumbers or different plants, and they're picking off worms in the evenings and the morning.
Oh, wow. So the natural pest protection, because you've chosen to farm a small space where they can feel protected from this, like, instead of a massive big field.
Yes. Yeah. I've got them on video multiple times, taking worms off my plants. So they're big helpers for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. If you could pick one, what would be your favorite farming tool?
I'd say for my scale, absolutely the Farmer's Friend Greens Harvester.
Okay.
That thing, because salad mix is one of my big things. I sell about 40 pounds of salad greens every single week. So being able to use that tool is like a game changer. And it's just been super reliable for me. It's never broken. I paid it off in like 5 weeks or something. Back in the beginning when I started. I love that tool.
Very cool. And so you're doing like a 30-inch bed, so you do 2 passes then with that.
Yep. Yes, I do.
Very cool. And talk to us about the maintenance on that. How often do you sharpen?
I sharpen after every use.
Okay.
So after every use, I'll blast it off with some water, pull the blade open, and I just sharpen it with the simple one of those rounded files,
Mm-hmm.
and I just drag the file across the blade on both sides. A minute later, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So let's talk about farming, the general farming environment that we live in. Do you believe that now is the best time to start a farm, or what do you feel about this, where we are?
I'd say this is the best time to start a small farm.
Mm.
I would not want to be getting into large scale, tractor debt-based agriculture right now.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you know anything about economics, we're heading towards an economic downturn soon, and that is never a good thing for the farmers. But yeah, for small farming, I think there's huge opportunity. In the last 8 years, I've just seen the market completely change as far as what consumers want. I think they're demanding healthier, the most wholesome food they can find. There's a lot of those customers out there now, so there's a huge demand for this high quality produce. And even back east, I was pretty surprised, like in Tennessee, some of my friends out there, they were able to command the same price as me.
Oh, wow.
For some of their chefs and farmers markets, like all their different produce they would sell, they could get the same price as me here in, California, San Diego, California, which is famous for being expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big reasons is because the quality level of the produce out there, because a lot of it's shipped in, very low. So when you're able to come with same day harvested, beyond organic food, people are kind of blown away by it.
Yeah, they're definitely willing to pay the difference.
And it's worth the difference.
Yeah. I mean, right now you look at what's happening in the dairy industry in Wisconsin. I think it's 2 farms a day are going bankrupt, and just the prices of corn and soy, and even like the people trying to do large scale hemp production. As we record, this is the second day there's a hemp auction going on, I think in Nashville area, and farmers were being offered pennies of what the prices were even 4 months ago, even 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, one of the guests we had on when we did our hemp series about a month ago was Howard Prusik, and Howard is just a veteran farmer from Vermont who's been farming. He's actually one of the first certified organic farmers in Vermont to get certified back 40 years ago. Yeah. Wow. But he kind of dove into hemp a little bit in the last couple of years, and he was walking us through his exact sales strategy, which has been directly to the consumer. And he avoided the entire disaster that so many farmers are facing because they thought they could sell directly to these massive companies at a very high price and make good money. So I think you're right. It's not just an individual crop. It's just, I think the environment that we live in today has changed so much. It allows farmers to sell direct to consumer for very easily and connect with those customers very easily. You do no longer need that middleman. And if you do decide to do that wholesale aspect, you are going to suffer with massive price differences.
Yeah, I totally agree. Going direct to consumer is the only way to go. And technology has removed the barriers to entry to us now, where an app is now the middleman, or we can directly communicate. So yeah, to me, that is the future. It's the future of farming. And our businesses can run more on a convenience model too, which is really important going into the future as well.
Well, I think another advantage too is just the freedom of information too. Is that whereas before it was the newspaper controlled the narrative, now everyone's a reporter, and so you can get the truth out about how the food difference is. And I think I don't know if you're familiar with the work that Dan is doing at the bionutrient.org, but the thought that we may even have a pocket meter out within a couple of years, be able to measure food from the farmer's market table or at the grocery store and what the nutritional value is going to be another game changer.
Yeah, I'm excited about that as well. Have that in our phones. That would change how we price food.
Absolutely. Yeah. People wonder why that beautiful head of broccoli is just sitting there on the shelf.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. So, Stephen, where can people find out more about you and your work?
So they can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at Nature's Always Right, or my website, naturesalwaysright.com.
Very cool. And if there was one video that you'd recommend them go watch on YouTube, what would that be?
I'd say my 3-year garden tour video.
Okay.
It's on my homepage, and I just talk about all the different systems that I've set up over the last 3 years on this small urban farm. And I reference like a lot of different videos that I've made that I think are really important.
Very cool. So it's kind of like the wrap up of your whole channel.
It is. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Stephen, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time today. And again, we appreciate what you're doing for the San Diego area and feeding them awesome food, because there's not enough farmers out there doing what you do. So thanks again.
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure getting to talk with you.
Absolutely. So there you have it. Another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.